Good morning and welcome to the monthly online talk of the Berlin Music Commission. I'm Eva Balaban, the Sustainability Manager, and I have the pleasure to welcome today Nina Valkanova. She's the Design Director at MING Lab and is going to talk about designing circular futures. Nina, thank you for joining me today and welcome. Would you like to present yourself before the presentation?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone, and thanks for inviting me. Really glad to be in such an interesting venue. I'm Nina. As I've already presented me, I'm part of MING Labs design consultancy studio that is kind of working with clients, partners, organizations around topics of digital sustainable transformation. And maybe a little bit, wait a second. Before we start, I think I have to be clicking some button. I don't know what you're seeing on the screen. So yeah, I'm myself a designer, digital interaction designer by profession and passion, also with a lot of previous experience in research and media arts and installation, and moved in the past years towards kind of more consulting through design and through research. And really happy to talk to you about recent thinking and approaches that we are trying to apply in our work, and to see how we can connect them all together for something meaningful in our everyday work and practices. Eva, I'm not sure you are seeing my screen. Let me know if it works.
It works. I'm seeing the second slide.
All right. I'm seeing that this meeting is being recorded. I'm not sure if that's also all right. Shall I start, or we have to wait a little bit for?
I'd say we start. So go ahead and yeah.
Okay. Then just shortly about MING Labs. You can obviously check out and reach out afterwards, but we are kind of a very small but global organization based in Europe and Southeast Asia mainly. And we're working across different industries, and also kind of from very strategic engagement to more practical production type of work. So we are a group of strategists, business designers, experienced designers, and technologists working on different problems with our clients. So as you can see here, we really don't look at any particular industry, but try to work across the board, across kind of different topics, and get new inspiration. And you can see here examples of some of the projects we have done that kind of touch upon the sustainability space in general. Perhaps we have some time also at the end to talk about them. I'm Nina. I already presented myself, so we can directly move. I'm starting with a little bit of a grim slide. Maybe it's actually not necessary to have it, because nowadays I think it's very obvious that industry and our industrial and consumer practices have to change. If we look at statistics, basically, and looking at the evolution and of our lives, we have been kind of here for 4 hours if we scale, the kind of the age of the earth, and we have managed to kind of destroy more of 50% of the world forest, just as an example. But I think this climate urgency is, in the meantime, clear for everyone, and awareness is changing, obviously. And of course, this will have a lot of different influences to many businesses, and I would say all the businesses. And this is what I wanted to first touch upon. Why does it actually matter? And basically, we believe that every company will need in the near or not so near future, better actually starting now, undergo a sustainability transformation. Doesn't matter where you are and what kind of you're doing, whether you're producing goods, services, events, and so forth. And actually, there are two kind of different transformations we're talking about. The first transformation is what is called like the triple bottom line. So it's like enhancing things, reducing material consumption, maybe reducing and diminishing negative impact. So that's kind of the left transformation. But there is also the sort of new transformation where we are creating new things, where we are starting, directly to create positive impact by design, new kind of business models that support circularity, for instance, which I'm going to talk about, new kind of initiatives that support SDG goals, and creating, so sort of a triple top line. So always having like positive impact by design, not just doing less harm. And this is where actually the so-called circular transformation efforts are also lying within this space. So let me talk to you about that a little bit. What is the circular mindset? Because actually this is not only a practice, it's kind of rethinking how we do, kind of what the economy might mean and what is our role in it. So first of all, what is the circular economy? Basically, you might have heard of it, and it has been around for a while as an idea in a way, and perhaps also as an approach. It's basically a sustainable economic paradigm that is trying to detach economic growth from consuming finite resources. So it means it is trying, or practices, businesses, and production approaches, for instance, around it are trying to optimize the utilization of value of resources, and actually ideally design towards zero waste. So it is actually nice that the circular economy is gaining momentum, because people are kind of, understanding better and better its many benefits. And it is really also cool that it has been gaining momentum politically and by regulation, especially from the so-called EU Green Deal that you might have heard about, and the European Union Circular Economy Action Plan. So there has been specific, standards that have been introduced, and now circular economy is going to be actually an integral component of the transition to low carbon and green economy in European Union and hopefully also globally. So that's a good news. It's kind of getting traction. It's being embedded in regulation, which we kind of don't have anything to do with, but it impacts everything what we do. And this, of course, is very, very interesting, but it also requires a radical rethink of how we design. And I'm talking from a design perspective, and I think design is a very broad term. It's not only about designing a web service or a beautiful experience. It's about designing the way we live somehow. So everything that we eat, that we wear, that we value, the way we communicate, the services we use, the technology behind them, everything is a design decision. So this is really exciting times for design-driven innovation, because actually the next kind of big frontier is thinking about circularity from a design perspective. So the challenge here is not kind of treating the symptoms of our so-called extractive economy, so economy that always uses resources and doesn't think about the finite nature of resources in a way. It's about how do we design stuff before actually waste and pollution is even generated, thinking already at the source in a way, kind of how do we stop perpetuating this linear model of good, affordable, exciting sort of consumption, but think about long-term creation. So without getting into too much detail, I'm going to show you some examples. This is a very different approach than what we've traditionally kind of known as designers as well. And it's because it's very systemic, right? It's really about creating a creative and critical lens and thinking about a lot of different kind of aspects that encompass certain challenges. So the important thing is that this is a kind of mission-led practice that is based on the 3 principles of the circular economy, and it's very systemic. And it's about eliminating waste and pollution, trying to create kind of designing in such a way that we have the highest value possible for the longest possible. So circulating materials and products, and ideally also regenerating nature by designing to improve actually local biodiversity, air, water, but actually some people even go further and think about improving social, interactions, improving well-being and health and so forth, because this is all connected. And let me show you a couple of circular stories, as I call them, a couple of examples of, I think, interesting circular services. The first, maybe you know it, it's actually very funny. It's kind of a modular headset that, you can not buy, but actually lease. So instead of, always replacing with a new model, throwing away something old that is not actually as bad, but has certain defects, or it's a little bit less fashionable, it's not really necessary. So it's like really modular, and then you can kind of lease it and have a subscription fee in a way, and you always have like a high-end headphone. Similar approach is basically product as a service approach. That's what I'm showing you here, is also being developed more in the enterprise level, where you have like companies having this type of practices. So it's about instead of paying for the so you pay for the performance of the product instead of kind of owning it, right? You kind of, in this case with the Hewlett-Packard Instant Ink, you have this subscription model again for like small businesses that can increase the cartridge recovery and recycling. So you basically, have a connected printer that that is able to, report how much ink has been used. So you basically really have this only per usage consumptions, and when cartridges are already, used and empty, you have a service and a prepaid envelope to return the used cartridges before you are running actually out of ink. And so it really helps this component recovery and recycling program initiative in the consumer electronics sector, because basically it enables also the company to put the cartridges through multiple uses, so that's less weight, and actually it's really improving durability, and the cost for customer is reduced, and the waste is reduced by, in this case, 57% even, which is kind of a win-win situation for both sides. Another example is here from the circular lighting kind of service. So this is kind of an initiative for Philips, where you have like a 5-year, I think, performance contract, and you talk, really saving energy. You have a higher uptime, and sort of really reduce costs, reduce the kind of the whole infrastructural, material around it, and actually use 50% less energy on the Amsterdam main airport Schiphol, which I think is quite impressive. And finally, something that I'm really curious if it's going to work for actually like households. That's another service, which is also an Internet of Things technology. It provides kind of a also paper wash service for machines, and you basically don't own your machine. You don't pay for maintenance and refurbishment, so it's kind of this new paradigm moving away from ownership of materials and always trying to get things back into the circular system. So these are a couple of examples. I'm sure there are many more that are very interesting and perhaps get you kind of inspired to look out, or maybe you have some to share. Wow, this is very interesting, and you see companies increasingly embracing this principle and kind of trying to really at least attempt to address the global environmental challenges also with their business. It's also very important to recognize that this approach is not without criticism. It kind of promises superior welfare, environmental benefits, even social outcomes that are much better than compared to traditional linear economy. But sometimes there is also criticism that this vision appears overly optimistic, and it's not so easy to actually achieve. In some instances, and I'm putting this great inverted commas image of trashed e-bikes. Sort of the promises of reduced environmental impacts are not really fulfilled. Like these dockless bike sharing services that have gained amazing popularity in China by offering new means of urban transportation, promoting low carbon and healthy lifestyle, and those increasingly urbanized communities. But what happened there, for instance, is that it was extremely hype, super overproduction, poor management, lack of operation of, kind of lack of understanding of operational challenges, lack of regulation also, like what is happening with all those things, all those trash that is going to be, actually generated. How are people going to, collect these bikes and so forth? So basically, it became a sort of environmental hazard. You see a lot of images of those, like landfills full of trash, of batteries and so forth. So in a way, it's not kind of to reject also the approach, is about recognizing and acknowledging that this transition to more circular practices, both for us as simple individuals and for organization, is quite messy, and it comes with inherent challenges. And overcoming these challenges means basically that we are able to examine the trade-offs, the tensions, the paradoxes, what might actually not work along the way. And this is where my second concept is also coming into the place, and that's future casting, which is a method that I'm super fond of. And I wanted to present to you because I think future casting is actually something very valuable that can help us, in these challenging and contradictory type of problems that we have nowadays. Okay, first of all, to tell you what future casting is not. So future casting, hope I don't disappoint you, is not fortune telling. It's also not about trends for the next season and what we should be wearing. That's a little bit of a different field. So it's not to say what is going to happen, but it's actually a kind of a framework and a methodology that enables us to work towards the futures we want to create, we want to be actually part of, and the choices that we make along the way. So future casting as a methodology kind of is bound on specific, principles and practices, I would say, that are always There it is involving like collecting many different types of data and research. Especially important is looking at trends, mega trends, and analyzing them, understanding patterns, and last but not least, really imagining an intuition. What does it mean? We don't stop in the analysis, we really imagine different possibilities. So it's kind of an iterative process where you're always asking a question, then you're scanning the world, you try to understand, to find out new things, mapping out possibilities, and moving forward in these circles. So you might think, but that's like something like, you know, forecasting or something like that. Organization actually do it, and it's right. It's correct. Most organizations actually do some long range planning, and probably wherever you are, your organization is also doing it. But despite of this, actually, a lot of organization at the end of this strategic planning kind of come to a set of forecasts which explicitly consider that the future is kind of an extrapolation of the present. Basically, it's what we have now, but you know, continuing towards it's going to be an extrapolation of a linear future. But the forecasting methodology, or it's called also strategic foresight, it's actually adopting a little bit of a wider lens and adopting the understanding that when we talk about the future, we have actually many lenses, and it's kind of spanning and opening up to different possibilities. So there are some things that we might be pretty sure about that they're going to happen, and that is the kind of the more probable future. But apart of that, there are infinite number of scenarios which might happen, and you know, those scenarios might be maybe plausible, might be preferable, might be even what we want to have, like the desirable scenario. One of those many futures that can happen is the future that we want to kind of look at. So this is kind of this empowering different perspective that is not about, you know, predicting the future based on what is happening now, which, as one futurist also says, is like is driving down the road at night while looking out at the back window. And I will give you an example of why kind of not looking at and kind of broader lenses might actually, you know, be really devastating for businesses or ideas. So there are different types. I'm sure you've heard about insight and hindsight. So hindsight is a little bit, we are here and we think what has happened, why this happened this way, and so forth. This is about understanding what happened and why. And insight and foresight are actually more like practices that help us to see, to capture cultural movements and changes, and to basically understand the bigger picture. So they are used to actually highlight and predict cultural forces, technological impacts, and so forth that actually impact people's choices and behaviors. And I here have an example of Blockbuster that you might probably also know. It has been a super successful video rental company, right? And the problem is that they actually didn't watch consumers engaging with YouTube when this started to happen. So they didn't observe consumers' increased willingness to stream video, coupled with actually the better technological capabilities. So at that time, they didn't agree to Netflix's very famous $50 million offer. And you can also watch the video. I'm going to share the slides afterwards. It's a famous example of the rise and fall of a very successful business. Also, Polaroid is another important example of kind of failing to capture how consumer cultural, techno-cultural forces are changing. So it's very important kind of to look at trends and broader impact categories. And this is kind of the main foundation of future casting. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about it, but let us start with something early morning. I have been talking a lot. Let us make a little game. So the game is called Guess the Invention. Okay, and I have here something with a couple of blank spaces, which is basically an invention that you would have to guess that has changed the power structures in some part of the world, is educating the general population, you know, undermining perhaps aspects of life or society, and laying down the foundations for democratic revolutions. So what do you think might be this invention? Maybe Eva can start guessing.
So Susan has suggested social media.
Okay, thanks, Susan. A very good one. Anybody else? So, what actually I was having in mind is something that has happened many, many, many years ago, and it's print media actually. And it has arguably changed the power structures in the medieval world when it first appeared. It kind of undermined the Catholic Church and enabled the Reformation, you know, kind of movement. And of course, laid down the foundation for democratic revolutions because of the many impacts to our kind of social and political decision-making processes that is enabled by democratizing print and generally creating printed books, educating the general population. But Susan is totally right. Social media, at least at some point of time, we can argue has changed the power structures in the Middle East, right? If you remember the Arab Spring 2010, I think, undermining the government at some point, laying down the foundation for an attempt for a democratic revolution.
We also had another suggestion about
yeah. Sorry, which one was that?
Unions.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there is a lot of different kind of social and political constructs that have changed power structures. I'm trying to put the focus a little bit here on some kind of an invention in a way, like a technological invention, because that's a little bit also the playing field we are in, but definitely. So in a way, what I want to show is that inventions have always been arising, of course, and have been appearing in our lives, and that have been kind of disruptive in certain senses. So social media, as you see in this case, is a positive disruption, right? But the same social media, actually, we can argue in a completely different direction, has changed the power structures in the Western world. And instead of educating the general population, it tends to manipulate the general population. It tends to actually undermine democracy, enable fake news, and lay down the foundation for more like political mass misinformation practices. So it's the same kind of invention, right? That has many different repercussions, many different implications. And this has arguably not been really looked at, especially from big tech before. So really looking at what could happen, and not only in my field, not only with the thing that I have created immediately, but what might happen socially. What are technological, you know, impacts there? What are emerging business models, news, science fiction even. How are we thinking about also when we work with future casting, we are really trying to get our thinking forward for the next 4 or 5 years, like expanding the horizon, and are exploring broader influence categories beyond our specific field of music industry, or I don't know, tourism, or whatever it is. So it's really looking at broader lens, and it's also, as you've seen in this example, is considering different implications. So it's on one hand the first order implication, which is like enabling, kind of undermining maybe the Catholic Church. It's enabling more democratic processes. But it could also mean in the next consequence is a second order implication. What could happen there? It could enable democratic kind of movement, but it could also enable mass misinformation. So there are many different outcomes that are possible. And the base and the foundation is kind of this pursuit of, this understanding of more bigger complexities and more kind of intertwined implications. So it's really, future casting is very important in our view for the organizational success in the future, because it's like really a systems thinking approach. So it's like looking beyond traditional kind of horizons. It's exploring plausible futures, both positive and negative, rather than making predictions. And it basically challenges really kind of current models and perspectives. And why do I think that it's really kind of beneficial, especially when we talk about sustainability, circular practices, design and innovation in this space? You have maybe already captured a couple of the main aspects, but I'm going to give you a couple of thoughts. So first of all, future casting enables organizations to stay ahead of technological advancement, and that's important for everyone nowadays. This can be done in various ways, right? It's kind of the most salient methods involve like technological scanning, where like we look at emerging innovations in our context. Might be if we're looking at circular economy, what is in material science, recycling technology, sustainable energy, digital platforms that support business models that are more sustainable, or environmental monitoring and so forth. So this is very important because, you might actually look at very different plausible futures. Not all of them might be desirable. And, you can then really think about innovative solutions. For instance, if you look at the battery industry, right, it's like told to experience amazing growth rates because of the electric vehicles and sort of the mobility transition. But batteries depend on materials that might not be there in the near future. What can happen there? What are the R&D efforts that are happening? How are we going to do new material innovation, alternatives, and so forth? Second, very important, actually, the base of future casting is using scenario planning to prepare for a variety of outcomes. So when we do this scanning and these different kind of implications thinking, brainstorming that I showed you, we actually develop scenarios that are based on different future trajectories, allowing us to kind of prepare for different outcomes. So typically we look at like 3-4 very different socioeconomic developments where the world is going to look like, where we highlight really the most important aspects. So here I give you an example of like scenarios for 2050 of how the world is going to be. It's going to be amazingly regulated and overly regulated and planned. It's going to be, a great kind of playing field for sustainability. It could be, basically total degradation of social collaboration and forces by everybody for themselves. and another one that is more like what is the minimum viable master plan, keeping it as it is. So it's like very extreme cases that could happen, that basically kind of depict scenarios that might kind of sound a little bit extreme to you, sort of the state communism, of like regarding sustainability, we have laws about everything in every aspect of our lives and so forth. So, but this helps us think about what are actually initiatives, ideas that can thrive and that can be, sort of successful in this context. And very coupled to this is actually this idea and this practice of identifying consumer trends and behavior shifts. So this is very valuable when we try to kind of look at shifting consumer preferences in our organization, in attitudes kind of towards more sustainable, perhaps, practices. So it's about really kind of looking at not like the next season trend or something, but like sort of an enduring transformation within the industry, within the society, within public sector, and so forth. So we are anticipating basically trends like changes in consumer willingness to embrace, for instance, circular consumption. As you know, like Patagonia is one of the examples that have grown their business out of repair and refurbish servicing, and are really good in storytelling, and they basically are kind of at the forefront at evolving this kind of circular clothing practices. Something else that with some example of our own work is like looking at broader social and consumer shifts to like really far into the future and understanding, okay, how are we going to change as a business, for instance. And here we worked with kind of with a very big company that's doing air filtration, just traditionally actually for cars. But we told them, I mean, cars are not going to be as important, hopefully, in the future, but air quality is going to be very important because of the increasing environmental challenges. So we were brainstorming scenarios of what if, kind of the air purifier is the next Gen Z hottest gadget in a way, and it's not a smart speaker. So those are actually what we called speculative headlines of the future. So it's like creating non-existent fictional headlines, but that are contextualized in like popular social media or business outlets and so forth, to kind of try to open up our brains and think about other implications. It's also important and very, very fruitful to kind of collaborate, especially when we talk about this complex, new services, new platforms about sustainability. And future forecasting is also kind of helping there. Here, for instance, we look at also a partner of ours, Poly, is a collective actually, not a company, from Dresden, that develop ideas and concepts and processes exploiting the potential of recycled plastics together with their partners. So they themselves are a big team of experts of very different areas, from sustainable design to materials, manufacturing, marketing, and so forth. So they themselves are for us an example of really cross collaboration and how kind of design also can help tell the story about that. Or something else that we also did with this air filter manufacturer, and told them, okay, cars, I mean, let's move beyond the industry we're looking at. What about fashion? What about new partnerships in the future that you wouldn't think about, like, for instance, partnering, Dyson partnering with Patagonia to create new garments that actually have air filtration within them. What would that mean for you? And so forth. Which leads me to the last, but I think very important, especially the role of design there, aspect and thought about actually the capability of this method to visualize tangible futures. So you already saw that in a couple of visual examples before. And this is the power for me of design. It's like bringing visions to life. It's not only about talking about them, analyzing them, looking at trends. Is also like, what will then be possible futures? And how can we tell the story of this future even if it doesn't exist? So it's like, creating visions that hopefully are emotional and engaging and help motivate people to take action. This is like an example I also like. It's a project, I think in the UK, where we kind of thought about how food retailers can, cooperate with maybe like the agriculture industry to move towards food systems that regenerate and have positive impact. So it was about making nature positive food in a way. So food that is not depleting resources, but actually helping them regenerate. And, this is like basically like a vision, for instance, a poster of this, specific food types, these potatoes that are actually supporting biodiversity. And, this is the so-called speculative design methods, which is about, imagining, ideating, and storytelling visually, in this case, nature positive food system. And is always contextualized in our everyday life in a story that we can relate to, such as, this is like, how would I imagine, like, the marketing of this piece, for instance, or what will the farmer in the future is actually telling about this story, how is that impacting the farmer's life? And this is like a fictional quote of a farmer, in UK, that actually is growing now, old varieties, and it's really like rotating his crops, and is actually contributing to both his welfare and biodiversity, which is a desirable future, right? Okay, a little bit of a closing remark, perhaps, on my side. As you've seen, like maybe you have also thought about that in your own work, but especially businesses as status quo is still a lot, unfortunately. It's about, feasibility, desirability, viability. So basically, how do we create products people want? How can we make money out of them? How can we actually make them possible, technologically? Which is really not enough. And we have to add more lenses in order to do meaningful innovation. We have to think about sustainability, but also responsibility in social context. And what I told you about was a little bit the approach or the thinking behind circular design, but also the challenges a little bit that are related to this new paradigm. And I've also told you a little bit about future casting and the idea that we have to look beyond horizon. We need to learn from history. We need to look at the present, but also, and very important, we have to anticipate what is called the pull of the future. What are, forces of the future that we think are going to impact us? So it's really about, studying behaviors, values, and drivers that, can help us beginning to anticipate. And the idea is basically that you have to build multiple perspectives and anticipate multiple outcomes in order to actually start anticipating the future and actually shaping a present that we really want to live in, and the future that we can really kind of desirably live in. And the idea is to basically, these methodologies and this type of thinking empower us to actually craft the futures we want instead of, waiting for them to happen. And that will be it on my side. Amazing that it really tells me 45 minutes. Never been so punctual. But yeah, thanks very much for listening. It was probably quite intense. A lot of talking on my side, so I'm stopping here.
Thank you so much, Nina. Thank you for this very interesting presentation. I'm going to stop the recording now, and for all our viewers, stay tuned to our next sessions for the Sprechstunde Musikwirtschaft. Bye. So.
Yeah.